Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You know, it's wonderful to wake up every morning, but it would be more wonderful if we could wake up with a smile on our face and the smile was there because of the satisfaction we had in life. Few of us have that expression every day we wake up, and most of us don't. And the reason we don't is common, and for the few that do, it's common. But the reason that we're all here is also common. I used to think that when we were taught that you die and go to hell, when you live in America today, you might think that you came from a place so much better and were born into a hell, because it is definitely that right now. It doesn't matter how many people are experiencing the good times. They've always experienced the good times. Every time there was a choice between one and the other, one was experiencing a good time, one was experiencing a bad time. That's why when you're married, you might find somebody having a heyday because they're loving it, they benefiting from it, and you might find someone else going through pain and hell because they seem to be stuck in it and don't know how to get out of it. Well, that's the way life really is. Now, I would like to think that all of my brothers, I got so most of my brothers are dead and buried, and I'm the oldest, and the baby brother, we're still around. And I ask myself, am I being punished for still being here? Am I chosen to do something specific? Now, this could be a punishment, but if it is, and it is, I try to use it as to do something very specific and very promising, because this is what I feel in within my own being. And I think I'm good enough to be able to think that every last one of us as human beings are good enough. You know, I think about a time when they used to refer to something called a gospel. I don't you remember you if you went to church, they talked about the gospel and they said the gospel will, you can try to ram it up in a whole bunch of little expressions of it, but the bottom line is that the gospel was supposed to have been good news. Good news for who? Good news for people who are not having a nice time, people who are in bondage, people who are not, who are going through, let's use our today's term, pain and hell, and with the suffering. So that would be good news. Good news would be people who don't have a home, that and they get it, and nothing would prevent it. Good news would be persons who don't have a job, but get a chance now to have a job, but not just a job, but a job that they chose, that they love, and they are wonderfully doing it, engaged in it. Good news, if you're going to talk about good news would be the fact that people wouldn't have to hunger for anything. They would always be healthy. Now, that would, to me, is good news. Good news would be that people would have access to education because they know what the purpose of education is, and so it would be unlimited and unrestricted. Why would you put a restriction on anything that makes you better, that makes the nation better? That sounds stupid. That sounds like something only a fool would do. And so, to me, good news would be having health care that was designed to treat the sick, to do everything it possibly can to discover what causes sickness and do everything necessarily possible to prevent it. Now, that would be good news to me. Good news would be, to me, would be having the ability to move around and to get around, and basically talking about transportation. So that would be good news to me. But not only that, good news would be to live in an environment where you say the infrastructure is so designed that you could, as wonderful as your life is with all these other things, it's just touched and matched by the infrastructure of the times. That to me would be good news. Good news to me, I'm just talking about the gospel now. And we talking about the gospel. Good news to me would be no more deception, no more need for it. Good news would be no more lying and cheating, no need for it. Good news to me would be no more hating, no more racism, no more bigotry, no need for it. Good news for me would be no terror and no war and killing. That would be good news to me. And better news in all of that to describe is that I and we, the people, could have our needs and our wants and desires met. And I can't see any reason why it wouldn't me, because I know that the earth is a power that given that is exercise, so we can have some place to look on the ground. I'm sitting in this chair outside on the ground, grass and trees and sun and all that kind of stuff. That's to me is good news since I'm benefiting from it. Good news is the resources that have come with the earth that allows us to do everything that we have done and are doing. Allows us to do chairs, make us to have shoes and eyeglasses and everything that exists. And then so to sometimes to our own detriment, cause us to create something like, and I don't know whether this is good news here yet or not. AI. You know, when you pick up, you don't have to read the book. You don't have to wonder what the word is spelled like. You can just say, AI, what's this? And they tell you that seems to be great. But when you look at AI, they're running and racing and fighting dogs and kicking you, you can bet your last money that in time, the same thing that allowed the people to take your land, the same thing that allowed people to put others in slavery, will allow these AI robots or whatever you want to call them to kick every human being butt that stands up against anything that would prevent people who are hungry for money, who don't know anything about the power unseeable, don't know anything about really sharing, causing a manifestation of the heaven on earth. Well, until that gets dealt with, anybody under that kind of rule is in hell. Yes, is in hell. So I'm thinking about what the gospel mean to me would be an expression of those things. Now, anything other than that just sounds like a weak gospel, a very weak gospel to me. And that the thing that I've just shared with you is a much greater news for me, at least. Now, I'd like to ask before I go any further, how many of you, having heard about the positivity of a new way of doing things as being an expression of gospel or responding to the gospel, and contrast that with the failure of utilizing the gospel with all the negative things I mean, how many of you would choose to go the way we call death? Or would you choose to go the way of life? Well, some of you might have chosen the way of death, but most of you who heard this, who made a choice, would say that you'd rather go the way of life. But the truth of it is that all of us are on the path of death. And I'm not talking about at the end of your life, just the end of the time and you got to go. I'm talking about in life itself. And rather than living, we are actually, as people, actually dead. So when I think about something about maybe a tomorrow, somebody dying and going to heaven, I say if heaven is so fantastic, then why not use it today? And don't tell me about it's for a time someplace else. Well, I say if it's for a time someplace else, then we should get some practice. So when we get there, we'll be ready. And why do I say that? Because I know the truth of the fact is that people do not know God. And I say God because we refer to the power that we can't see, the invisible power that does stuff that we cannot do. We refer to it as God. No ugliness intended. And most folks just do not know God. Now, I know many of you say you do, but the truth of the matter, even those of you who say you do, what you have is a memory or recall or books of what other people have said about God, because none of us really have seen God. But you've had a lot of people. You got Bibles and all kind of books written about God from far back as you can imagine. And we take those things in our church today. You know, you got some books got 66, some books got 71, and I hear some books got 80 something. All about this invisible power. And depending upon where you're at, depending upon your location, you ascribe to that understanding as you're being taught, just as you speak the language that is being taught. Wherever you are, the language that you are being taught is an exact pattern of the faith or religion, or if you want to call it that, is being taught and accepted. And just like your language sounds different in other places when you are actually saying the same thing, What happens when it comes down to your faith? It depends upon whether it represents pain and suffering or the lack thereof. And when it's denying the truth, just it's going to be just like anything else. Hell. So I say this, ladies and gentlemen, because you can tell the people who don't really know God. Well, nobody really knows God, but you can tell the ones who want to play like they do. Those are the ones you have that kind of conversation with. They're always talking about scripture. See, that's one of the ways they've been prone to believe that others accept the fact when they start talking scripture, they know what they're talking about, but they don't. You see, scriptures are nothing but, as I say, it's testimonies. Scriptures are testimonies. And we know what testimonies are for. Testimonies for is to lift up or tear down, but to teach you something. But at the same time, just as they have those testimonies, you are required to have your own. And if you have a relationship with God, the testimony that you give, it might be saying the same thing that you just got to hear James or Peter say. But the fact of it is, it's more real to you than they are. Why? Because this is you. This is your story. And nobody knows your story like you know your story. Nobody can tell any story any greater than your story is told. Doesn't mean that you are greater than them, but at least people listening, people hearing it. And so if you know God, then we talk about God. We talk about you and your relationship with God. That's what we're talking about. See, people always talk about what God done for me. Big God, and God did this and God did that. But how very few people talk about what they are doing for God, what God has called them to do, and how God has sent them through different things, different changes just to learn what will be required in this walk of life. And so, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I get up every day thinking about today, not just for me, but me. I don't have too far to go. Just get up. And right there in my immediate surroundings, I know what it would be like if we were living like we were in heaven. And there ain't nothing like that. And I know the rest of you are the same way. So my thing of it is, what can happen today that will make tomorrow different? So I come to you, ladies and gentlemen, and I challenge you. I challenge you, the people, to put your teaching aside and learn something new. Learn something new. If it's not working and it's hurting, it's one thing for it not to be working. That's reason enough to change. But if it's hurting, if it's causing pain and suffering, then you must get rid of it right away. I think when I really think about what America's going through, it makes me feel that America is the most crooked nation on earth. And the reason I say that is because we say that America's so great. America got this, and that, at least that's the way it's presented to us. America, just like they taught us English, just like they taught us a lack of history. America is the number one nation on the face of the earth. Every nation says that about themselves. And we, for some strange reason, after we hear that stuff all our lives, to a certain point, we believe it. And yet, when you start thinking about the results of the pain and suffering that's going on, you can see America ranking up there with the most. Sure, there might be people who are more hungry in certain countries than in others. There might be people who get better health care in some places than in others. But the truth of the matter is that somebody is hungry. The truth of the matter is somebody's not getting that health care. And as long as that exists, that means that an absence of God or evil is so big as a tree that you just can't do anything about it. But if you know God, you wouldn't sit around and watch this stuff every day. These people don't know. They thinking the story that they were taught is the one that's sufficient of life. Now I tell you, I've been out here for 40 years, and they say I got out of 40 years. They say I may have 1,400 subscribers. 40 years, people get thousands of subscribers overnight. I run for president at least 2 or 3 times. I had to run as a write-in. Nobody was interested in what I just got to telling you. Because why? You have to play a part in it. Actually have to play a part. And you have been taught that you are dumb, you're stupid, you're ignorant, and you're foolish. That's what you've been taught. And you would say you don't believe it, but you're acting like you take it for gospel. Wow. And it frees you, wow, from having to do anything. But to me, America is, under these circumstances, based upon what they said about themselves, is one of the most crooked nations on the face of the earth. We got more people in prison than anywhere else in the world. More people. And you know what? What is that? It's an expression of the failure of the system. But the system doesn't fix itself. The people within the system do fall in those other categories, don't care. And so you just line up in prison, just like folks go to the military. Don't care. They say don't like it, but they don't care. Like they got no power. They acting like they dumb, stupid, ignorant, and foolish. I got to let you go, ladies and gentlemen. I can't talk no more right now.